In the mid-1960s, America wasn't just living its automotive golden age. It was worshipping horsepower like a religion. Drag strips popped up everywhere, from small towns in Ohio to the blazing boulevards of California. People no longer asked how your car looked. They asked how much horsepower it made. In that world, Chevrolet didn't want to follow Ford or Chrysler. They wanted to shatter the limits. And so, a monster was born. A steel heart forged to roar like thunder, stunning the entire nation. The L78 396 cubic inch big block V8. It wasn't just an engine. It was a declaration of the era when power came before everything else. After the glory days of the past power plants, the once mighty 348 and 409 that thrilled speed enthusiasts were beginning to show their limits. Too heavy, hard to tune, and no longer keeping pace with the performance demands of a new era. GM engineers decided to start from scratch. They didn't just want to refine an engine, they wanted to create a whole new generation of big blocks, stronger, lighter, and ready for an age of extreme performance. Thus began the Mark IV project, a true milestone in American engineering. Their goal was clear: preserve the signature torque punch of the 409, but redesign everything, from combustion chambers and cam geometry to the oiling system and high-flow heads. The result stunned the industry: the L78 396 cubic inch V8. Launched in 1965, this powerhouse was installed in the Corvette and the Chevelle SS396, two machines that defined Chevrolet's performance spirit. Yet GM didn't promote it loudly. The L78 was treated like an experimental weapon, meant for drivers who truly understood what they were holding. An engine built to push Chevrolet beyond its own limits. From the outside, the L78 396 didn't look much different from other Chevrolet big blocks. But tear it down, and you'll see why engineers of the era called it a weapon beyond reason. This 396 cubic inch, or 6.5-liter, powerhouse featured high-flow cylinder heads, forged pistons, a hot mechanical camshaft, an 11.0 compression ratio, and a Holley 780 CFM 4-barrel carburetor. Every component was built for maximum performance at high RPMs, turning the Chevelle or Corvette into a literal rocket on wheels. What made it special was the all-new Mark IV design: canted valves, oval combustion chambers, and improved intake exhaust ports that allowed air to flow nearly twice as efficiently as the old 409. The result? 425 horsepower at 6,400 RPM. A figure many believed GM deliberately underrated. Independent dyno tests showed it easily breaking the 450 horsepower barrier with torque around 415 pound-feet. Yet the numbers only tell half the story. The way this engine roared, its instant throttle response, and how it kept pulling relentlessly, that's what made American drivers fall in love. The moment the L78 396 hit the streets, Chevrolet dealers knew they had something extraordinary. Everyone who came to buy a Chevelle SS396 was drawn to its astonishing power output, but few truly understood what that meant in real life. Those who test drove it quickly realized this car wasn't for the faint-hearted. One hard stomp on the pedal, and the rear tires erupted in smoke, painting the pavement white. In inexperienced hands, the L78 could turn a Chevelle into an untamed beast. American journalists warned, "This is not a car you let your 20-year-old son drive on a Saturday night." Some states even suggested that GM limit who could buy it, claiming the engine exceeded the safe limits of public roads. Insurance companies soon followed, raising premiums sharply on cars equipped with the L78, labeling them high-speed risks. For GM, it was a genuine shock. They wanted to build the most powerful engine in its class, but didn't expect it to scare regulators and buyers alike. However, if there's one thing that truly made the L78-396 a legend, it was the cars that carried it. More than just a powerhouse, the L78 became the beating heart of a generation. A symbol of the era when Chevrolet set out to prove that performance wasn't reserved for the wealthy. The 1965 Corvette L78 marked the engine's public debut. Only 2,157 units were built, making it one of the rarest Corvettes of the 1960s. With this engine under the hood, the car could exceed 140 miles per hour, and its thunderous roar turned heads everywhere it went. It was the sound of Chevrolet stepping boldly into a new age of performance. Just a year later, the Chevelle SS396 arrived, the car that brought the L78's power to everyday Americans. It was the moment when true muscle escaped the limits of expensive sports cars. Starting at around $2,800, drivers could now own a coupe capable of running the quarter mile in just 13 seconds, something unheard of in its class at the time. By 1969, the Camaro L78 emerged as the ultimate expression of small-bodied muscle. Only 4,889 units were produced, and many were later tuned by Yenko and COPO dealers, transforming them into feared drag strip warriors. Today, a well-documented, all-original Camaro L78 can fetch over $100,000, depending on condition and provenance. When the L78-396 began making its mark on the streets, Chevrolet didn't stop there. They wanted to know, could they take it even further? And so, within GM, a quiet family feud began between three legendary big blocks: L78, L72, and L89. The L78 was the foundation, a 396 cubic inch iron head engine with a solid lifter cam and an 11.0:1 compression ratio. It represented pure, balanced performance, strong, durable, and attainable. Every big block Chevrolet built afterward owed something to its Mark IV design. Then came the L72-427, born with the same spirit, but with greater displacement and even wilder power. Officially rated at 425 horsepower, real-world figures often reached 450 to 460, making it essentially a supercharged version of the L78 in spirit. A monster designed for the strip, not the street. Meanwhile, the L89 told a different story. Still based on the L78-396, it featured lightweight aluminum cylinder heads, trimming nearly 75 pounds off the front end. That made the Camaro and Chevelle L89 models far more agile and track-friendly. But with a much higher price tag, only a handful of brave buyers chose to pay extra for performance. In the end, each engine had its own identity. The L78 as the solid foundation, the L72 as raw muscle, and the L89 as the cutting-edge experiment. By the late 1960s, as NHRA stock and superstock classes exploded in popularity, the L78 became the weapon of choice for independent racers across America. Names like Bill "Grumpy" Jenkins, Dick Harrell, and Don Yenko turned the L78 into an icon of American speed. They knew the hidden potential inside that 396 cubic inch block, an engine that could rev high, respond instantly, and deliver massive torque right off the line. With expert tuning of carburetors, cams, and ignition timing, racers could unleash far more power than GM ever admitted. Under Jenkins' command, Chevelle SS396 and Camaro L78s dominated superstock classes, thrilling crowds every time that 396 roared. Meanwhile, Yenko's legendary COPO conversions took the L78 to new heights, pairing it with lightweight Camaro bodies to create beasts that even GM itself hesitated to endorse publicly. What amazed everyone was not just its speed, but its durability. The L78 could endure hundreds of drag runs without needing a rebuild, something few big blocks could claim. After dominating drag strips from stock to superstock, the L78 396 didn't just thrill spectators, it made regulators and insurance companies nervous. Its true power went far beyond what Chevrolet officially claimed. And soon, people began to wonder, was GM hiding something? For anyone who ever drove a car powered by the L78 396, the official 425 horsepower rating felt like a joke. Everything about the engine screamed more than what Chevrolet admitted, and over time, enthusiasts began to realize GM was lying. By the mid-1960s, insurance firms and racing bodies began tightening restrictions. Cars rated above 425 horsepower faced massive insurance premiums, while NASCAR and NHRA classified cars by published numbers. GM knew that if the truth came out, the L78 would be labeled too powerful to be legal. So instead of revealing its actual 470 horsepower potential, Chevrolet capped it at 425. It was a smart, legal, and calculated move, avoiding trouble while convincing buyers they were getting a street-legal powerhouse. Independent dyno tests later exposed the truth. The L78 easily made 450 to 470 horsepower and nearly 420 pound-feet of torque, numbers that made both Ford and Chrysler nervous. Racers often said the L78 could pull neck and neck with a 427, sometimes even harder at high RPM. As the 1970s dawned, the nightmare for power lovers began. After years of glory, big blocks like the L78 396 were forced to step aside for a new era, one ruled by regulations, limits, and compromise. In 1970, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency introduced its first emission standards. High compression ratios, aggressive cams, and Holley 4-barrel carburetors, once the heartbeat of legends, were now labeled enemies of the environment. GM had no choice but to detune engines, lower compression, and rework its fuel systems. At the same time, insurance companies started taxing horsepower. A Chevelle SS396 or Camaro L78 could cost nearly twice as much to insure as a base model. The young buyers who once chased speed now had to walk away, not out of desire, but because they couldn't afford it. By 1970, the L78 quietly disappeared, replaced by weaker, cleaner engines built for compliance, not passion. The raw power, the thunderous sound, the trembling steering wheel, all began to fade from Chevrolet showrooms. Yet for those who ever heard a 396 come to life, that era never truly ended. It still echoes down empty highways, reminding the world that once Detroit built machines so powerful, the world had no choice but to take notice. Maybe not everyone has driven a Chevelle SS396 or a Camaro L78, but once you've heard that roar, you understand why Americans called it the Age of Soul and Steel. The L78 wasn't just an engine, it was a feeling, a reminder of when power was measured in emotion, not numbers. If you've ever owned, driven, or simply heard a big block thunder down the road, share your story in the comments below. Do you believe the L78 396 deserves the title of Chevrolet's greatest big block heart? Or does your loyalty lie with the 427, the 454, or another legend entirely? And don't forget to subscribe and like to keep that sound alive. The roar of an era when Detroit built machines that made the world stop and listen.